This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, May 21st. We'll call the Wright County Board of Commissioners to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, starting off today's meeting, we have a number of minutes. We have minutes from 5-7, a couple of three different meetings there, one from 5-8, two from 5-8, and one from 5-14. We can adopt these minutes collectively or individually. Is there any modifications, members?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, starting with 5-7 board meeting minutes, under item 6, pulled from consent, the waste management contract. On the first sentence, add 7 months ago after the word expired, and that catch mark read from the job description of the procurement analyst, which noted monitors contracts as an essential function. Then the budget committee of the whole on 5-8. Roughly half the office and department heads weren't at that meeting, where there was a narrative about staff requests from the board as far as approving little to none. I'm wondering if there's any interest in including any narrative to that for those that weren't at that meeting, because there was a narrative. Mr. Chair, you led it.
Yes, there's a recommendation on as far as that goes from there on that, but
I'm just bringing attention because for those that weren't there, I don't know how much emphasis there's going to be if they,
And I think that it's worth making the note to it. We can note that it was a articulated by the board. I would say pretty unanimous that staffing positions will be in this budget cycle will be highly scrutinized and will be very far and few between that will likely to move forward. Given the potential financial budgetary constraints this season, and as the current economy is in flux. Is that a fair enough?
I'm good at that. I just didn't see it in there. If it's not unanimous, then if someone wants to speak up now, we can go to consensus. But all right, that's addition. I didn't have that written out, but just bringing it up. Under 514, the county board workshop, item 9, last couple lines. This was an error in how this was written, but Ketchmark agreed with putting all staff rehire or backfill positions on the consent agenda except for the procurement analyst position. That one should be on for consideration. The consensus of the board was to do this, and that's what it was. But the minutes reflect different, that I was looking for all of them to go on for consideration, and that wasn't the case. It was just that one position. Does the board remember that?
I'm not clear on that.
So I know that you wanted that, sorry, Mr. Chair, that was as a separate. you
Just
wanted
that one position,
That one
'cause-
position as a separate, that's how I remember it as well.
But the minutes say that I wanted everything to go for consideration or discussion. That wasn't it. That was that one position, and the consensus from the board was yes.
Yeah, for one position, yes.
Yes.
And that's where I'm reading because it's here, the recommendation was board consensus to bring forward staff rehire requests with detailed documentation as consent agenda items for approval, with the one item being noted out. So you just have to add the additional to the recommendation.
Right.
That the one financial position be an agenda item when coming forward.
Right, that's what we agreed on, Mr.
Yep.
Chair. So that affects what staff does with that position, that they understand that that's not to go to consent.
Yeah.
All right. Then workshop minutes, 514, under the safe schools. there was lengthy narrative on the safe schools from the presenter there, and I don't know if my mic quit working or this is like the old Don Williams song, Say It Again, but Ketchmark noted that there's an ability to meet virtually by Zoom or Teams that wasn't available when Safe Schools meetings started 30 years ago. With now over 50 of these meetings a year, that's about 100 hours of staff time with the commute for every staff member that goes to every meeting. And there are at times 4 levels of staff from Wright County offices or departments attending these meetings. Some of these office and departments are the ones that are often asking for more new staff. So I'd ask for that to be added to the minutes in the appropriate section. And those are all I have, Mr. Chair, and those have been given to the minute taker if nobody is opposed.
And because wanting to make sure, and I'm not opposed to it, but I want to work with you to, because we're now wanting to create minutes that are verbatim for all conversation, but I also want perspectives and point of views that need to be articulated within the minutes. So maybe there's a way we can get to a bullet point where it articulates in each individual's that comments perspective versus getting every word for word verbatim, because that's where we're trying to work with it and trying to get the overall conversation. But then I think what we're missing right now is some individualized perspectives that is important, and I want to make sure that we can get that in there without having to go verbatim. Is that?
Well, it is. I think the things I'm wanting to add, they add necessary context to what leads to a recommendation or not, and then also leads to process change and everything else with positions. And if that part is missing from the narrative, then it's kind of like, how did we get to here from there? But some of these, Mr. Chair, there's like the Safe Schools, I think we all had input, and there's nothing identified from anybody except the presenter. There's 3 lines at the end that says the board suggested this. And we are a board, but we represent our districts and constituents, and I think that it's important if a board member wants that to be part of the record that they can and should. And so I think those are good points. And I don't call out every agenda every week, but this one, there was 5 of them or 6. There's a lot to take in, a lot to consider, and that's my point, Mr. Chair. Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair?
Yes.
Just real quick, I mean, to understand there was a consensus, it wasn't always unanimous, and maybe the whole idea is that when we do complete a discussion on one of the topics, that we articulate clearly what the recommendation is at the very end, so that is documented in there. There's a conversation, but ultimately, what is the recommendation? And that's what we should be focused on coming out of those workshops.
And to Commissioner Ketchmark's point, and I was going to address it later in the meeting when actually working through the recommendations, because the recommendations on the Safe Schools was an ask of staff to at least articulate and work with the schools to try and reduce the frequencies, at least at some of the districts, in how often they meet. And it was a little bit more than an informational only recommendation. And I think that's what you're articulating through the minutes.
Right, and adding context, because we're putting numbers, we're putting dollar amounts potentially to support our request for a change. Otherwise, it looks like just arbitrarily, we just think there's too many of these, cut them down. So that's why I'm putting some context to it.
And I think knowing the direction and the flavor of the board here, I can work a little bit better with staff to get more clear recommendations on some of them. So I will make sure that that's better articulated on some of these items. So usually I've been pretty good about it, but I believe on some of these ones here, I should have given a little bit more direction with them on what the recommendation should be. So.
I agree.
Okay, I don't know if anyone else has anything else to change on the minutes.
Mr. Chair, so I have in the budget forecast, there's nothing in my recommendation to the amount that I was trying to set mine for. Mine, in the exact wording, I'm a little scarce on it. However, it had to do with the whole inflation rate of 3.4%, because that was back down, and then to add on like the cost of living. So I know I was around the 4.5 to 5 as far as being out there to what rate I was looking at.
So, and I encourage members here, if you're looking to make these language changes of your own, and I'm going to use the word of your own, to work with Caitlin there to make sure that the minutes reflect your comments. If you want to change other people's comments, I would encourage you to have that conversation now, but I'm okay with you articulating your own comments for the minutes afterwards, so.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that I have some type of forecast in there to what I was looking at as well. And I can work with Caitlin to it, but it was something along that extent. Thank you.
All right. So with that, we have a number of modifications to the minutes, and as I stated, for the individual comments, please work with Caitlin after the meeting to make sure that the minutes reflect what you're looking for, but otherwise, the bulk of the minutes, I would look for a motion to approve them.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion for all, looks like 6 versions of minutes with those proposed changes.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shane. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, the minutes are approved unanimously. All right, now moving on to today's agenda. Is there anything that needs to be put onto, petitioned onto today's agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to petition on the process of scheduling the upcoming closed session top secret meeting. Just the process of how it came about.
Excuse me, the top secret meeting.
The closed session for labor?
How it was scheduled?
Right, how it came about, because it wasn't the same as the first two.
So, because it was posted out, wasn't scheduled via the board, is what you're saying?
Right, I can go into it further here if to help you understand, but there was 2 previous meetings.
Yes.
That were brought about here in front of the decision makers in this meeting. The third one was scheduled within the second one. And I want to discuss that process of how that happened.
And I understand that one there. So if you want to elaborate on your perspective on it, and then we can kind of have a discussion. So do you want to make that, we'll make that item for consideration A2.
Okay.
A2, and we're going to be process for closed session.
And I already spoke in fairness to Attorney Lutz, so he's not ambushed by this today. He's the legal representation here.
Sure.
And so just so Mr. Chair is not wondering about that, so, okay?
Fair enough. All right. So A2 is good with that. All right. Any other items? I'm going to add on 2 items. One would be B3 to reschedule the committee of the whole for the sheriff's office. And the B4 would be to discuss modifying next week's committee of the whole public health, as I've been requested by members to discuss moving that. All right. Is there any other agenda items that need to be petitioned on today?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with those additions.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved unanimously. Today's consent agenda, would anyone like to remove anything from today's consent agenda for further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Catchmark. We have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark for the approval of today's consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda approved unanimously. All right, running a few minutes behind here. Our first timed agenda item would be Alicia, Wright Soil and Water Conservation regarding the Joint Powers Collaboration Agreement for the implementation of the South Fork Crow River Watershed Management Plan. Wow, the One Watershed, One Plan is actually going to come up for a final vote.
So, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So this is the South Fork Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan. It has been approved by this board, Soil and the other participating entities as well as the Board of Water and Soil Resources. So now we want to sign this agreement so that we have access to the funding that comes along with it. So that's the watershed-based implementation funds for the South Fork, small portion, the southeastern part of the county, and this just gets us on board so that we can access funding. We have a few ditch systems in the area, which would be a primary target, I think, for this, and soil health, cover crops, that sort of thing.
So, Alicia, reading through the JPA, because it doesn't address any kind of fiscal sharing, so I'm assuming that you're going to operate entirely with the funds through Bowser, that you're not going to look to the individual counties part of the JPA for any funding source, because it doesn't address any kind of cost sharing within the JPA, at least from what I could read of it.
Okay.
So, and that was a thing that I was wondering, okay, if there is a shortfall in revenue, how does that fall back to the jurisdictional counties in it? Is it?
Can you explain more about the shortfall in
So
revenue you're referring
if
to?
they would, for some reason, there would be expenses that would exceed the money that you're receiving from the state on it, does that liability then, how does that liability then fall back onto the participating counties?
So if I'm understanding correctly, if there's not enough funding for the projects that are proposed, some of the project would get pushed back to the next funding cycle because this is to implement the projects that would happen, like the water and sediment control basins to pay for cover crops.
Yeah, I guess I'm more gonna, if there was some sort of a cost overrun, just because it's not addressed at all within there, that if for some unforeseen reason that there was something went wrong in a project and it ended up costing more than what you got from state funds, how does that get delineated within the members of the JPA?
My understanding is that the liability is on the individual entity that was contracting the project, so it would be on that entity.
Okay, so because any matching funds are coming from whether it's a lid or if it's Wright Soil and Water that is partnering with the South Crow, then this Wright Soil and Water would be the responsible for any type of overrun, and that would be part of an individualized agreement that you're setting yourself up to be a JPA that's a granting agency only. You're not actually going to be doing the projects. You're only granting them out to individual entities to do projects.
Yeah, there's no additional entity here. It's everybody's operating as their own entities, and I don't believe there's any shared liability.
Because the only reason, but there is going to be staff that's compensated out of it, and that's another piece that I look at it, because staff there is always a potential chance of cost allocations to it, because if there is any liability to it, how does that get delineated out to the associated members in there, because it's not addressed within the JPA. That's the only piece that it's always nice to iron out. Worst case scenario, if we have an expense to this organization between all these different counties, who pays what share? Yeah.
Is there a concern that you want me to bring back to or that Commissioner Diedrich could bring back to the policy committee before signing it, or just
Mr. Chair, could you explain, Alicia, the funding and how often it is and where it comes from, that type of thing, so that understanding that we ultimately aren't funding this. It's the state of Minnesota does.
And I understand that. I mean, this is the state's giving each one of these one watershed, one plans a chunk of money, and they're the agency that should be granting this out. But there is administrative staff that is being paid for with these funds, and then they are creating the JPA amongst these counties. So essentially, this JPA is the employer of these administrative staff. Am I understanding that correctly?
No, there's no additional entity. So the staff that are doing the administration, I believe, will be the Renville Soil and Water Conservation District, and they will still be staff of Renville Soil and Water Conservation District. Renville will then receive an allocation from the funding from the grant agreement for each. And if I may, each grant cycle, which happens every 2 years, we must establish a work plan that is approved by the policy committee, which is elected officials from each entity, including Commissioner Dietrich. And they will approve a work plan. So for the administrative side, they will say, you guys have $150,000 over the next 2 years for administrative. And if they overrun the cost, then Renville SWCD is like responsible for still paying their staff person, or they need to adjust what is happening within that grant to maybe push things back for the next grant cycle.
And I may have misread it because I was reading it as though there was administrative staff of the South Fork One Watershed One Plan, not that they would be retained as employment of Renville County.
No, this agreement is a joint powers collaborative compared to a joint powers entity, so it has no power to have its own staff at all. Each entity has to retain its own staff. It gets very confusing.
Oh, yeah, that would be different. Yeah, but that's a good question.
So, any other questions from members?
Mr. Chair, I guess I still have some questions, understanding I'm just not understanding the full process. Is this something that we could have Kreiser look at just to make sure that we're not involving ourselves in something that, I understand I don't want to lose the funding, I don't want to lose any of that, but I just want to make sure, like you said, there's no back.
This is already, Mr. Chair, this has already been approved by us, and Kreiser has looked at this?
Yes, we have this agreement has been shared with Greg Kreiser.
So, I'm okay with for the most part. My questions were answered. The language was a little bit ambiguous, but I'm not an attorney, so I will defer if Greg's signature is there and the box is checked that Greg says it's okay. So that leads me to believe that at least the ambiguous language that I'm concerned about is being taken care of. So.
And this is the last step in order to receive the funding for the South Fork Crow River.
Yes, once we have this, then we can get the work plan approved, and then the funding we'll have access to July 1st.
Perfect.
It's kind of one of those ones where you have to scratch your head as to why the counties need to be involved into it. Because when you look at it from the perspective, we're not putting money into it. Really, to me, it's more of a collaborative agreement between Wright Soil and Water, Renville County Soil and Water, than it is the counties themselves. I mean, other than the fact that we delegate authority on a certain amount of things that could tangentially lead to projects, but could we apply for those projects not being part of a JPA? Yes. Could you do it as part of the JPA? Yes.
Commissioner Vach, I can see where you're coming from, because I'm on a joint powers board, and unbeknownst to the counties, they weren't doing things properly and got funding cut from deed. So then, because of the actions taken, then all counties then were on alert that we would have to pick up the pieces. And I think that's where Derek's coming from, that if something if the funding would stop for any reason, would we have to then pour forward money to finish the project? I mean, I'm sure that's not going to happen. It was a rare occasion very joint powers boards don't even understand that they are on the hook for it. And I think that's where Derek's coming from. We found that out with that CMJTS. So I think that's kind of where his trepidation is. Like, if the funding would stop, or for some reason it would go over, are we going to be on the hook for that money, is like basically the question, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure, or if there is a project that for some reason the grantee approved, the South Fork approved a grant that Bowser later on says no, who's liable on it, to pick up those. And I guess in this situation, you're making documentation that is holding the grantee of the South Fork responsible in that situation.
Yes, we have. That's why there's specs that we need to follow, and the contractor who's actually putting in the practices is held responsible. Like we have our staff on site on all of our projects to make sure that they meet the specs defined when creating those projects. Otherwise, the contractors don't get paid.
Okay.
So,
All right. So with that,
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to step in. I read the packet last night, so it took me a while to get through this. But this is the one where Ricky Noonan, I believe, reviewed it and approved it as well, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So I think we're covered, so.
Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, that makes me feel better.
all right. Well, with that, then, if there's no other discussion here, I'll entertain a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
All right.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Dietrich, second by Commissioner Holland. I appreciate the in-depth conversation. It's always good that we ask pertinent questions. So with that, if there's no other discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, the Joint Powers Collaborative Agreement is approved unanimously.
Great. You guys can just send me an electronic copy of the signature page, and I'll get it over to the South Fork. Thanks.
That's great. And moving on here, Chad has waited ever so patiently to come up here and sing for
Thank you.
us.
Yes. So we'll start with, the first one is the resolution for, and I have to apologize, I dropped the ball last week, and the language in the resolution is incorrect, and Tina picked me up and caught it this morning, so I do have a corrected resolution, and I can explain in a second, but I wanted to hand it out real quick.
Good catch.
So the yellow is what's corrected. It's just basically summarizing the change, and I'll explain it in a second.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then I have the corrected resolution, just what we left. I wanted to give you the highlighted piece.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so similar to the Franklin Township Bridge we did a month ago roughly, and if you look at the language and the resolution we submitted, it references their bridge because we copied and pasted, and apparently with the resolution formatting, you have to delete a page. Well, we didn't proof it, so we dropped the ball, but try to correct it here if we can because the township's under the gun here to get things moving and they need our support. So because we're the fiscal agent, we have to approve any changes, and based on the engineer's design of 105th Street and Hoyt Avenue on the south side of Sugar Lake, they're going to do some grading and paving of the road to the state. They got $600,000 roughly in state park road account funds, and they have to meet certain standards for that road. There are certain areas where we don't feel they should have to meet standards because of some sharp curves, some wetland impacts, and some property owner impacts. So to avoid those impacts, we have to apply for a variance. So MnDOT concur. We had a meeting with MnDOT. They're going to concur, but we do need a formal resolution from the board to support those variances. And basically, that it's to avoid some wetland impacts, not have to flatten some sharp curves, and then how we tie into the boat ramp. So if you want more detail, I can go into it, but essentially that's the purpose of our resolution. And the corrected language was the more in detail, so I apologize for messing up on that one.
Yeah, Mr.
Discussion.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I just appreciate you putting this all together real quick this morning.
Thank you.
It seems pretty simple. This is in my district as well. And if you look on the map, you'd see how it's a necessity. So I would recommend moving forward with approving the variances.
All right, is that a motion?
So moved.
All right, motion by Commissioner Dietrich,
I'll second that.
second by Commissioner Holland.
All right.
All right,
And if possible, could we get signed today and get to MnDOT if we can? And we can follow up with Caitlin later. All right, sorry.
no, we're good. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? Any other question, members? No? All right, this is a resolution. Commissioner Catchmark.
Aye.
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 All right, resolution passes unanimously. Our next item. We adopt a letter of support for Sherburne County's pursuant of the Consolidation Rail Infrastructure Safety Improvements Program.
Thank you, Chairman Vetch, Commissioners. So this is an important project for Sherburne County and also for our region. We're all familiar with probably County Road 11 that cuts from 25 up to Highway 10 and across the railroad tracks. And it's County Road 11 actually carries more traffic than Trunk Highway 25 in that area. So they're applying for a rail grant to try to get a grade separation and interchange at the intersection. And Chairman Vetch can probably comment too. It kind of ties into our CMRP corridor also as part of that project. So we definitely support, we definitely recommend supporting their application, and the letter of support would have all commissioners' signatures on it, I think. So
This is, to Chad's point there, this project here is probably one of the biggest projects that we can do in the short term to help move traffic on 25. That pinpoint there of 10 and 11 in Sherburne County with the railway there. Any improvements that we can get there and get funding to do that is only going to help be able to get the traffic that we currently have there across faster. Currently, you could see traffic backing up close to a mile during high periods, sometimes even further on holiday weekends. So needed improvements there.
yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve that letter of support.
Motion by
Second.
Commissioner Holland, second by Commissioner Shane. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, letter is approved unanimously. And now we have another letter of support for Sherburne County's Community Energy Transition Grant.
Yes, this is through, because of the Sherco plant, coal plant being decommissioned, there is basically a pot of money through the deed program. That's first come, first serve. Sherburne County would like to apply for, and it has to be in the county, so only Sherburne County can apply for this. And you have to be in Sherburne County, so we wouldn't be able to apply for this. But the goal is to use funds to complete the Phase 1 EIS of our project up in Monticello, Big Lake, Becker area. So it would basically half the funding that they get would benefit us because we're splitting all the costs for the environmental work 50-50. So definitely a worthy project. And like I said, it's first come, first serve. So we tried to get this out as quick as we can.
This is another great opportunity, especially there's only a handful of counties that would be even able to apply for this. You'd have to have I'm going to use the word imminently, or at least a determined closing date to be able to apply for these energy transition funds. Hence the reason Sherburne County is positioned for that, and it is very gracious that they're interested in using these grant funds towards this project. With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, motion by Commissioner Shane,
Second.
second by Commissioner Dietrich. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Letter is approved unanimously. And lastly here, we have the award contract 2404 for CASA 2.
Yes, this is our joint bridge with Stearns County, CASA 2, they're CASA 7, just north of South Haven. And we opened bids. We had one bidder, which isn't great, but the prices came in right at our estimate. We have $800,000 in bridge funds, and the bridge estimate was $805,000. Approach grading for each side is each our responsibility. So our share is roughly $177,000 for this bridge. So we're recommending awarding it.
Discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yep.
Morning, Chad. So did you say the cost to replace is 800 and the bid was 805, or what was the difference there?
Yep. Let me, so clarify. We have 800,000 in off-system bridge funds that can be applied towards the bridge itself, but then you have a roadway approach grading on either side. So on our side of the bridge, there's roughly 177,000 of approach grading. The bridge is 800,000, and then the Stearns County side, there's 340-some thousand of approach grading work. So the grand total is 1.33 million. 2% over our estimate. We feel the prices are fair and in line with other bid openings around the state for bridge projects. So typically if there's one bidder, we may want to rebid, but if we rebid, we won't be building it this year. So we'd have to wait till next year. And with inflation, whatever we gain, we'd lose more than likely waiting a year. So we're still recommending award. And like I said, the bridge came in at about 805,000 when we broke the bid out by work types, and there's 800,000 of federal money. So then Stearns County and Wright County will split that remaining $5,000.
Oh,
The bridge is 50-50. So
well, if it was me, I'd get hold of the contractor and say, well, counter offer with 800,000 for round figures.
Sealed bids, though, that's not,
You can't, well, you only got one bid, but.
you can't reverse bid and say, well, you do it for 800. How about 750? How about
Oh.
700? No, it's
Okay.
just the bid's the bid. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
if it wasn't a sealed bid process.
It was,
That's exactly, sealed bid processes don't lend themselves to that like you could do with like a professional services.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was a
Nope, that's
difference
fair.
because you
Fair
only
question.
had one
Yeah.
bid.
Like I said, it's not ideal, but like I said, the prices do seem fair. So,
And Mr. Chair, those numbers are reflected in that total amount, or the lost funds that we're putting towards that, the $2,500 that would be split
yeah. Yes.
each.
All right. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right, motion by Commissioner Shane, second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, contract 2404 is awarded.
All right.
Thank you, Chad.
Thanks again for working with me on the Corona Township resolution, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, now moving up to Ross, who's making his way to the podium here. To adopt resolution authorizing appropriate county officials to sign grant application agreement and certification in regards to Wright County Snowmobile Association participation grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this is a routine item that gets approved each year. It's a resolution and to authorize myself to be the signer of this grant. And so this is a pass-through grant. So we receive money from the DNR and it gets passed through to the Wright County Snowmobile Association, which represents, they're kind of the parent organizations for all the smaller groups in Wright County. Take care of about 247 miles of snowmobile trails throughout the county.
Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question and a comment. This last year, and not trying to call you out, Ross, but I just have some questions because some constituents and non-constituents came to me. Was there a different application that this grant went through? I just had gotten some feedback from some people to how this went through the process and stuff. Was there a different change of plans or application we had to go through or anything?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the second time that I've been involved with it, and it was the same process as last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe you and I can sit down and talk about that sometime. It's just that, and now that this came forward today, I was gonna, and I apologize that I'm bringing it up now, but if we could set some time across sometime just to kind of talk about it, maybe there's something we can streamline to help you in this process, because I just had gotten some feedback. So definitely want to make sure we're utilizing this in the best possible way that we can.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thanks, Ross. And I know this has come through before. Now, the winter we had with little to no snow, there was not a lot of trail grooming and all that going on. What happens to that? There must be money left, and how does that carry forward? Or is there an expiration on every year's money and has to go back? Or what's the plan if it's not used?
Yep, so I believe the money is still used so that the Snowmobile Association submits the paperwork that gets passed through us and to the DNR, and then they cut them a check.
So it's a reimbursing grant. So if you didn't have grooming hours, you wouldn't turn it into the DNR. The money still stays at the DNR.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
then what the state does with their leftover funds, the state does
Thank
with their
you.
leftover funds.
Please
Okay.
do.
All right.
Mr. Chair, members board, that's not exactly correct. That was past practice. The DNR changed it to a different grant, so it's an allocation each year. It's to create the club so that they have a funding source. They get 4 payments a year based on the applications, and they get an allocated amount. They call it performance-based, even though there's no performance tied to it. It's benchmarks of, you got your signs up, have you done your maintenance, have you done this, have you done these check marks of your activity indicators, and then those applications go from the club or the association, which is all 12 clubs, to Ross. Ross then signs the paperwork, sends it over to DNR. Check comes to Heather and Lindsay, and then goes back to the clubs. So it is an allocation, and it's more set. It used to be more based on activity and miles of trails you groomed and that type of stuff, but then the club's fundings went like this based on winners, and they changed this process a while ago.
So they would actually they should be ahead that they can take on bigger projects based on this year. So that's,
Equipment as well, they're
yeah,
grooming equipment.
these are the good years that they can upgrade their equipment because other years they have it spent into labor grooming,
Or like
vice versa.
2
Yeah.
years ago when we had a lot of snow and they groomed a lot more, they didn't get more money for that, so they built up their reserves.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, this could be why the
good, thank
question
you.
was out there, because maybe this plan was something that maybe led differently. Right, Mark? I mean, just saying from previous years, and if this is the new process and how it's going, maybe that eventually went down the line on timing and stuff, so.
Could have. I'm not sure exactly the conversation you had, but this
Okay.
performance-based grant, at one time, our association didn't want to be part of that. They wanted it based on the activity. And then it was kind of forced down everybody's throat maybe 10, 12 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, speaking of finance, doing some administrative work, does any of that money go to our finance staff for their time and effort in handling the grant money?
But I don't believe so.
Can finance speak to if that's is that available or eligible, or is there much involved, or? This kind of just goes to the point, Mr. Chair, of doing free accounting for somebody, and should we, shouldn't we? I don't know.
Heather.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chairman. I'm not sure we would have to do more research. I'm sure if it's eligible or not. I mean, yes, we do have administrative time, but I'm not sure if it's eligible or not.
Well, can I request that a little research be done, and that if that is worth asking and eligible, that we get what we should for our efforts of staff time?
Certainly.
Is that if we have a consensus up here to look into it?
Makes sense
It's
to me.
fair enough. I mean,
I don't have a number of hours or money, so I don't have a starting point, but when they say that they are doing something for
and which
somebody
is
else,
a practice that we do, that we, I believe through conversations that we're looking at as new granting things come on, is looking at how we, if we can implement our administrative costs with them, and when and if applicable. Sometimes it's a do not pass go, and other times it is palatable, usually at like a 10, 15% or less.
Yeah, it depends on what the grant agreement reads.
Yeah.
So once we look it over, we should be able to determine if we can charge our
as
time.
Mr. Chair, we remember fiscal agents with lids. Since I've been on now, we started collecting some fees for doing that bookwork, and we weren't before. So to be consistent, we should look at this. So if we can request that, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing county officials to sign documents for the Snowmobile Association participation grant aid.
So moved.
I'll
Motion-
second.
Motion by Commissioner Shane, second by Commissioner Holland. Any further discussion?
Chairman, I just want to say, send back to the group that get a lot of compliments on how nice they do. Wright County does a really good job with their snowmobile trails. Comments all the time, people that move into Wright County for that reason. I had a discussion with somebody who said that they wanted to live in Wright County because of our snowmobile trails. So it's a good thing on our behalf, and thank the association for all their work.
Yep.
I know it's a lot of work.
Certainly will pass that on.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. With that, resolution, Commissioner Shane.
Aye.
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 And Commissioner Catchmark stepped out, but resolution passes 4-0. All right. And now moving on to item D. Matt, making your way up to the podium here to schedule a special meeting to review petition for repairs on Joint Ditch 14. This ditch here is a ditch that is combined with, is it Meeker and McLeod, I think?
Yes, it is.
It's all down in that southwest part of the county, and looking to appoint, is it 3 we need to have, or 2?
Yeah, this one would be a special meeting to review the repair petition. In the case of eventual public hearing, which is what you would determine if we are moving forward with future steps, that would be a public hearing with notice and coordination with Meeker McLeod as well. So the purpose of this special meeting, we've received a repair request pursuant to Minnesota Statute 103E 715 Subdivision 1. And when you receive a repair request on a ditch system, we did one very recently for County Ditch number 19. County Ditch number 19 is completely within Wright County, so it's a little bit easier to hear and inform those meetings. In this case, it's on Joint Ditch 14, where we have 2 other counties who are active members in that. In the case of Joint Ditch 14, we are the host county because the majority of the system's within Wright County. So in that case, we have 3 members that serve as the drainage authority from Wright County, 1 commissioner from McLeod, and 1 commissioner from Meeker that also have been appointed and will serve on this board. So you would, at this special meeting, which we are scheduling today, you would review the repair petition and determine if repairs are needed and appoint an engineer. That engineer would review the ditch, complete a survey, and come back at a future date with a repair report. And we would schedule a public hearing from there. Again, with the joint ditch system too, we have to have a public hearing with coordination with Meeker McLeod for that. So this one is just to review the repair petition. Staff did have a recommended date, June 18th at 1 p.m. I did touch base with Mark this morning. That time does not work. There is another meeting that has been scheduled.
I was just gonna say that 2 of us would have been out right away. It would have, by default, you would have had 3, but 2 would have to attend for sure. The other 2.
Yeah, and in the Joint Ditch Authority for this one, there are 3 commissioners. So that is Commissioner Vetch, Commissioner Catchmark, and Commissioner Dietrich that serve as on the Joint Ditch panel. So all 3 of you would definitely need to be there in case we're not able to get attendance from Meeker and McLeod to have the quorum. So they are recommending 11 a.m. instead of 1 p.m. on the 18th.
Are we doing it here, virtual? What do we, I don't know if we are allowed to do it virtual.
We can't do virtual, so hopefully they will be able to attend, but it would be here at the Government Center.
All right. 11 a.m. works, so it works for me. Commissioner Dietrich, Commissioner Catchmark, is that good?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to appoint, well, we already have the appointees, but to schedule a joint ditch committee meeting on June 18th at 11 a.m.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, motion by Commissioner Catchmark,
Second.
second by Commissioner Shane. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, just, this thing has started long ago and it's drug on longer than probably it should. But if the other counties can't make that date, then as long as we got our 3 here, we can have the meeting, right?
Yes, yeah, you need a quorum to appoint that engineer. So yeah, as long as all 3 of you are here, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, and I think with the amount of time and the type of response that you got or didn't get from these other counties, that I would say we hold that meeting whether they can make it or not, because the onus has been on them to respond, and they haven't been very timely.
I know, I think it was April when we had the first discussion on this petition, so it's,
Yes.
we've given them more than enough time to make a response on it. So.
We were looking at photos with snow
Yes.
over the holes that you could drop a side-by-side in because the tile had blown apart. So that's my opinion anyway on.
I'm going to encourage them to at least submit written comment for the hearing if they're unable to attend as well.
Okay, thank you.
Very fair. All right, so 11 a.m. on June 18th here in this room. And we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Meeting is scheduled unanimously. I'm assuming admin will send me an invite on that. Thank you. And next would be Barry making his way up here. Oh, no, it's not Barry. Jacob's making his way.
So, good morning, Commissioners. Here today to ask to adopt a resolution authorizing myself to submit an application on behalf of Wright County to the MPCA for the low-interest septic loan through the Clean Water Partnership. So, just want to clarify something up front. So, we accept an application fee, so that pays for our staff time on our septic end, for our septic professional to review it. We accept the fee up front by the applicant. Then in that application fee, there's a additional fee in there that goes to the recorder's office for recording this onto the deed to pay through their taxes. Then in the interest aspect of it, because it was in the form of a 10-year, 3% interest, we collect a little bit of interest on that as well to pay for staff time, to monitor it throughout the whole loan, to make sure it's paid off. Other enforcement would be needed. So with that said, it's fully funded. We do not owe any money, no matching, nothing. This is just an application just to see if we can procure this low interest loan to continue, because in the past it's been now going on for 14 plus years.
And Jacob, usually we only have about a handful of people that are utilizing it at any given time. It's not like we have a list of, 40, 50 people that are on that loan program.
We had 46 septics between 4 years, so 11 people a year.
Roughly. So I say it's a couple handful a year, but we're not getting 40, 50 year after year. So I think totally we're probably, would you say 40 to 50 total on the program?
With the 3-year loan and then with the 1-year extension that we'll probably procure if we get it, yeah.
Mr. Chair, and we've seen it come through before, and the thing about it now is that money doesn't go as far as it used to because the cost of septics have gone up.
Yeah,
So-
when it first started, it was 13,000. In 2011 to 2014, now it's about 18,000 on average. There's others that'll go up upwards of 30,000 now.
Somebody's catching on and a good listener because you see how you addressed admin costs right away. Thank you.
I figured that question was coming, but I want
Jacob, you might be getting a gold star today. Those are really hard to come by. I got one just the other week, and I'm treasuring it. So
It was on a string, but he still got it.
you might get yours without a string.
Hey, better.
All right. So with that, this is just the annual process of adopting and continuing the septic loan program. Is there any other discussion?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Commissioner Dietrich,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Catchmark. Any further discussion?
Isn't it the roll call vote?
Yep, it'll be a resolution. Yep. So we have a motion. We have a second resolution. I vote aye.
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 All right, resolution passes unanimously. Thank you, Jacob. All right, we are finally here making it to the items for consideration. The first one would be to request schedule a committee of the whole to review the status and direction of the household hazardous waste. So I think the administration is targeting June 4th.
Correct.
So let's
Mr.
see.
Chair, we do have a number of meetings that day. We may need to look at one in the afternoon.
I'm good with one.
How long will it possibly take, generally?
I guess it depends on how much
About
you
an
guys want
hour,
to
how
talk.
much
I guess
discussion you wish to have.
I would say it should be able to get done within an hour, 90 minutes tops, but there isn't that many.
That works.
I mean, unless you want to go at like 12:30 so we can get it done a little bit earlier.
12:30 would be better.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go with that.
All right.
Because don't we have the JD meeting? Wait, no, we changed that. Okay. Originally, I had something down for that 14 ditch, but that's fine. 12:30 on the 4th.
All right. So we have a motion. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Holland to set.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shane to set June 4th at 12:30 for the Committee of the Whole for Household Hazardous Waste and Recycling Center projects. All right. Next, we have a grouping of different recommendations. So starting from the top, we have the, sorry, mine got out of order here.
Yep, ditch first.
Yep. The first one would be the May 8th County Ditch 19 Committee Drainage Authority meeting. And that one was to review, the first recommendation was to review the land ownership repair request inspection pursuant to 103E.715 and determine if any repairs were necessary. And then the other one was to appoint an engineer to make repairs, a report in agreement with 103E.715 subdivision 2. So those were the two agenda items. And then the recommendation was to approve a contract with the engineering firm and order reestablishment of records for County Ditch 19. So with that, I'll entertain a motion and a recommendation, or a motion to approve the recommendations from the May 8th.
So moved.
All right.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Shane, second by Commissioner Holland to approve the Drainage Authority Committee of the Whole from May 8th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Motion's approved unanimously. Next was the minutes from 5/8 from the Budget Committee of the Whole. I think I did them out of order, but the recommendation was to direct staff to schedule specific times for the August budget meetings and that all backfill positions must be brought forward to the board for approval as a consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, just, can we add that except for that one position?
Except for, except for the one finance position.
That would be brought for consideration?
Yeah, that would be that would be a timed agenda item. All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendations from the May 8th Budget Committee of the Whole.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Catchmark, second by Commissioner Shane. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question with that, Commissioner Ketchmark's suggestion to add that that one position, wouldn't that be something you could run through personnel? Why would that need to come through to us?
Either way, they all are coming to us.
Right,
So it's,
then why does
it's,
it have to be called out like that then?
Either way, it doesn't matter because he could pull it from the consent agenda. He's just stating that I'm going to call it off the consent agenda. So he's making it known to just please don't put it there. Just save yourself the pause in the agenda. So just put it as a timed agenda to begin with. So, all right. With that, we have a motion. We have a second. Do we have a motion on that one?
Yeah.
Yep.
I motion.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Recommendations approved unanimously. And now we have the variety of recommendations, largely informational, from the extensions, then the Fair Board, then the Safe Schools. The recommendation, just a slight modification, was that we would request that the school districts and the county staff work together to, in some cases, not all school districts, but in some cases, work to reduce the frequency of them, just to be good stewards of both staff's times on both ends. So then the other one was to, the external survey was to direct staff to move forward with a launch of the external survey with the follow-up results reported to the board between August and October of 2024. So as part of that presentation, they kind of give us an outline of the questions that they're going to be submitting out to the public. Then we also had the 800 megahertz. The board's consensus was to continue with the use of the old systems components and the spare and move forward with the purchase of the installation of secondary system. So good discussion on that. I think a good path forward on it. Then we had the process for contract reviews, which was just an informational kind of walk through where that project's at. We're getting there. We still have a ways to go, but we'll get there. appreciate staff's time with that one. It's not an easy one to move forward with. Then we had the shortened informational on the legislative updates. We'll probably have a much more robust discussion with that on either the action or inaction of the legislator. I think it's more inaction, which in some cases is good, maybe in other cases bad, depending on what topic we want to talk about, right? So then the last one was the staff rehire consent agenda, was the board's consensus to bring forward staff rehire requests with detailed documentation as consent agenda items, which was already part of the budget forecast, which we just had additional discussion. It was also just kind of an overviewing direction to staff to be very cognizant when coming into this year's budget cycle with asking for new staff, as we are taking a deep dive into looking at maximizing internal operations before we look at adding additional staff. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget workshop recommendations.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Holland.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Catchmark. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Budget workshop minutes approved unanimously. Item B3 added on was to reschedule the sheriff's committee of the whole that was just scheduled for this previous week, but was canceled due to conflicts. With that, we have a targeted date. Chief?
Brief discussion with the chief there. I believe we are now looking into June, of course, knowing you're not looking to have meetings next week. So options would be the 6th, following the leadership team meeting, if we could do that a little later, or maybe the 3rd. I know the 4th is very busy for the board already, and I don't know on the 5th how many of the board are participating in the soil and water tour that day. Otherwise, that may also be an opportunity in the morning.
I'm better on the 3rd.
The 3rd is fine.
June 3rd's good.
Good.
Chief, what time of day you thinking?
Morning?
Morning? You want to go at 9 a.m.?
Yeah, 9 a.m. works for us, Commissioner.
All right. And so June 3rd at 9 a.m.? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right, motion by Commissioner Shane, second by Commissioner Dietrich for June 3rd at 9 a.m. for a committee of the whole regarding Sheriff's Department outlook. I'm going to call it our forecast. Yeah, that's probably fair enough. Because you're going to cover multiple topics, I'm assuming.
Probably try to keep it directed to the city contract rate discussion.
Okay, you can be just on city contract. Okay, perfect. All right. All right. So with that, any other discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. June 3rd at 9 a.m. is approved unanimously. We had a scheduled meeting for next week on the 28th for a discussion on public health and the public health authority that we have here at the county. I was asked to look at seeing if we can reschedule that date as there is a couple of different conflicts with individuals on the board. Looking to push it to the following week, if at all possible.
Should we do it on the 3rd? Being as we're.
We can do it on the 3rd, yeah. We can just follow it up. So we did the 3rd at 9 a.m. You want to just say it at 11?
Is that work for Sarah? She's the busy one.
Jamie, you have a budget meeting scheduled. You have a budget meeting scheduled. Yeah. We have a site visit with MDH, but I think I don't need to be in that. That's fine. Supervisors can be in that. That's fine. 9 a.m. on the 3rd?
Or, no, we were looking at 11 a.m. because we have
sorry.
9 a.m. we already have.
Well, I apologize.
11?
That's fine. That's even better.
All right.
Good.
Perfect. All right. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Holland. Second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Shane. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. June 3rd at 11 a.m., the Committee of the Whole regarding Public Health Authority is scheduled. And that brings us to the end of today's agenda. Is there
Mr.
any
Chair,
parting comments?
I had the closed session that you had put on.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I skipped that one, didn't I? I apologize. I must have scribbled it out. It's right. I had an arrow to a different area on my agenda. Thank you for catching me on that. That was supposed to be A2, so I apologize. So the item was the process for closed session. So Commissioner Catchmark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to address the decision to schedule the third session of labor negotiation and the way that came about. We already had two on the on the subject matter with, by my count, about 7 six-figure staff and commissioners. This is running over $1,000 just for the meeting time, not to mention the planning time. And the other two were brought up and requested in the meeting here for all the commissioners. And the third one, now, fact was I left early from the second one, but regardless, the third one didn't get pushed through here for consideration, or I know I only got one vote, but it'd be nice to use it for something like this. But the scope has also changed from the first meeting to now the third of who would be potentially involved and included here. So it's not a continuation of exactly the same meeting for 3 meetings in a row. So I wanted to draw attention to that because of how it did change from one group to another and how that third meeting was scheduled at the second meeting, the top secret closed session. And for overused and abused word transparency, it just doesn't seem right. So I wanted to call attention to that, see if there was any comment on that piece of it.
So I think the intent behind that meeting was to leverage the fact that all the pertinent individuals were already meeting for a closed session. On that, we met all statutory posting requirements for it. Then the secondary option to do what you would say the additional item added to it was added by members up here of the board related to other consequences of one action and how it may have consequential actions elsewhere within the organization. And hence the reason that it was maybe perceived that it was added on, but it was actually added on in discussion, so it was articulating ramifications. So from that, I understand your point. I think whenever possible, and if you look at the timing on it, because the way with us only meeting twice a month, we have to, in some cases, post meetings that don't always go through here, just to be able to do business. Our best practices when and if possible, we will be scheduling meetings on here, but it isn't in a definitive action that we have to do. But that was one that I put on there, looking to at least continue the conversations, leveraging the fact that the individuals that were in that previous closed session are the same individuals that would be necessary for the next one.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
But that extra group that was included at the second one weren't present at the second one, but we're assuming they'll be at the third one. There wasn't anyone representing that group that you suggested we bring in.
That was because it was without actually being it's closed session details. So without being able to discuss it, it was articulated that if you take actions here, that it will have consequences here. That's why that discussion was brought up. Those individuals weren't there because I am articulating the fact that if we do something here, it is going to create other issues within our organization.
Okay.
And that is where that brought into the discussion.
Okay, then I'll go this route. That I'd like to make a motion that no more closed sessions for labor occur on this subject matter until it falls in line with the regular contract time for negotiations. Because the here you're speaking of could be way wider of a here than we are drawing in unsolicited. So that's a motion that I make.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Catchmark. Do we have a second? Do we have a second? Do we have a second? All right, motion dies for the lack of a second.
Okay.
I appreciate your perspective on it. I don't want to necessarily know that I want to marry myself to something like that, especially in this, what I'm going to say, complex labor market. I mean, there's days that I look at it and go, oh, it might be turning the tide. It might be getting to be more of a leaner labor market, but then there's other days where it's not. And it's very tough, especially now in getting very I'm going to call it specially trained staff. In certain areas, we're trying to find unicorns. In other areas, we have piles of applicants.
And Mr. Chair, I would like to just say that I don't want to hand tie us, that when we want to bring certain things to the table during a conversation, because good conversation leads to good decisions and what is our future. So that would hand tie us to only being able to discuss what's at hand and not what could develop.
Mr. Chair. So, okay, it'll stand as is then, I suppose, the date and time. But I will add this for consideration, that I would like the exit interview information that's been compiled by staff for the last year and a half, and the literally hundreds of employee engagement surveys that our staff has taken the time to do, be tabulated and summarized for this third meeting to see if it fits in line with the subject matter here. Because otherwise we're taking away from what the staff has been doing on the side, and that seems like that would be very relevant to this discussion. So I'm not in favor for sure of the meeting happening until this material is available, and if it can't meet that deadline, then look at postponing it until it is available.
I will support that. I think that that's all pertinent information that we need. I mean, that along with some other things that we requested at the meeting itself, that together will be able to give us a good picture on action or inaction that we may need to take.
So then we need staff to weigh in to see if they can meet that deadline. They've got 30 people on a committee to review 300 and some surveys. That's Clay's deal, I think. So we need some feedback if they can meet that date, I would say.
What is that meeting on again?
It's June 4th, right?
June 4th, yeah. I was saying, yeah. I had to remember, I was looking on that one. And maybe we want to consider pushing it back a week. We could just move it back to like the 11th, just to give extra time to.
So, Mr. Chair and the board, you're looking for the full report out from that engagement survey, just to be clear before we have that meeting to talk about closed
The
session?
internal, they want, yeah, a synopsis of the internal report.
So we have all of our meetings we've been having. We had some of them last week. We have a number of them this week. Our last are concluding on this Thursday. And then we have to put the report together, and we'll probably need to do some staff review. The 4th is going to be really tight for us to be able to turn that around, especially if we'd like to give commissioners ample time to review that before the meeting. I mean, that only gives us probably a week or so from today, and less than a week after we have our last meeting to write the whole report and review it. I think that we'd need more time than that to have that full report out on the engagement.
So you want to push it to like maybe the 11th after a workshop? Or do you want to go even further? We can go.
I think we may want to go a week further. So our intent with that is we would like to have the full report drafted, have admin have a chance to review it, and then have one more meeting with those focus groups to go over the results and make sure we captured the essence of those conversations. So I'd say you'd probably be looking at mid-June at the earliest before we could have that completed and ready for consumption by the board.
June 18th?
Yeah, we have nothing after that. So
Because
like
we just
11?
scheduled
We
somebody?
just scheduled the ditch meeting.
But that was at 11.
Oh,
Do you have a cannabis work group at 1 or 2?
One, yeah, it's hard to say with that county board meeting. I have to say that I have to give myself at least till 10:30 for sure.
yeah.
Then we want to look at the 19th.
That's Juneteenth.
Oh, that's Juneteenth, that one. Huh?
How does Monday the 17th look after EDA?
Oh, the 17th is good.
We can do that.
Go with a 9:30 on. So I will entertain a motion to move the closed session from June 4th at 10:30 to June 17th at 9:30 a.m.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, this is two prongs of information, the exit interview info too, because the bottom line is that we're meeting because of exits. So we have to look at the data from exits And what we've gotten so far is just exit interview narrative with no department or office attached to it. So we really need that too. Otherwise, we don't know who we're looking at.
And that was that's what I believe he was looking at, the exit.
We just talked about the survey. I just want to make sure that we're clear that it exit interview data too, because that's equally important.
In some cases, maybe more important.
Right. Well, that's the purpose why the meeting.
Mr. Chair, I don't want to go too far into the weeds on stuff we discussed in closed session, but what I'll say is that we've outlined what we would say is a comprehensive set of information to bring forward to the board to review the complete situation. So I think, I feel pretty comfortable that we'll be able to bring all of that forward by the 17th. And I did have a conversation with Commissioner Ketchmark about these concerns, and I think he's comfortable with what we're planning on bringing forward regarding these positions. So we can have that ready by the 17th.
All right.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ketchmark. Board members, now, is there any other parting comments?
Mr. Chair, thanks for bringing up what could be an uncomfortable or touchy subject. And Attorney Lutz didn't have to say anything, so I assume I stayed in my lanes. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, one quick comment. The Highway 55 Corridor Coalition did receive $2 million for an EAW in the transportation bill that did get passed.
Oh,
Well, there was some good action there.
surprise.
And, I think it's good to see that. I mean, unfortunately, we have to wait a whole year till we get the third testing option here available in Wright County, but at least it passed. So we will say that was good. So we'll be able to expand testing to a good chunk of more individuals here in Wright County, but they have to wait till August of 2025. I'm not quite sure why they wouldn't do it this August, but whatever. So with that, we'll adjourn today's county board meeting at 10:17.